less the root people. So I did have to do some research into that.
Yeah, and I just think it's so interesting because when we talk about voodoo and all of these things, we kind of keep them separate from Christianity, but there is the laying of the hands, right? You bless the oil, you anoint the head, and you do all of these things, and we don't always see those things cross, but you do that here in such an elegant way in this film so that you see that connection. So I just wanted to point that out and say that I appreciate that. And revisiting the film again, it just stood out to me. And so my next question kind of shifts a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Black girlhood, right? So this film is from the standpoint of Black girls, and we have the value in their voice, right? And I just want to talk a little bit about the idea that you center their experiences, you center their voices, and why that's important, and why that was what you chose to do in this film.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that I was trying to make a statement. I didn't look at it that way. I was writing in some ways about myself. I was writing in some ways about my family, and I was telling a fable at the same time. So it's has elements of my family that are recognizable to them, but it was at the same time a fairy tale, it was a fable. But I wanted there were things that I was doing very intentionally that were missing from films that I was seeing. So there was that girl's perspective, and also something having to do with beauty and inherent class that I felt that we had and have always had and have had for a long time, that I think that was not understood, and that was something that ended up being almost political for me as I went through the journey of the film, because people really didn't believe it. I had a lot of people not believe it, and then having to really show people photographs from the 20s, or, really having to give a little bit of a history in Black elegance.
Absolutely. Design and style of this movie was so beautiful. Right, I was just talking to somebody, we were talking about Debbie Morgan's hair. Yeah. Right, the elegance in her hair and her dress. Yeah. And right, the attention to detail was so beautiful. And seeing that and honoring that aesthetic, right, and honoring that truth that people often forget is a representation of Blackness. So that was just so beautiful to see. And I also want to talk, what was it like to work with those young Black girls, right? You have a young Journey Smollett, you have a young Megan Good. So what was it like to work with them on this set? You're dealing with some deep and some heavy topics, but you were able to have them remain as children, right? So how were you able to do that?
Well, one of the things that was incredibly helpful was that I had been trying to make the film for so long that when we started the table readings, Megan was Eve. So Megan grew up with the film. She knew that script very, very well. She knew who Cicely was since she was, reading Eve. So that's the trickiest part in a way, and she had a lot. I've been around her parents and her family, and then same with Journey. I mean, I just quickly made friends with her family. We had time to rehearse. We had time to get to know each other, and they felt like my children. I still feel like that when I see them. It's like they were my family, so we had a very, very close relationship while we were shooting. And they were magnificent actors, just fabulous, fabulous, fabulous actors. I always say actors, but actresses. They were very gifted young people. And so it was my privilege, it was easy to work with. It was wonderful. I was able to, when you're directing, you were able to remove some of the content from what the child is experiencing, right? So the scene where Eve wakes up in the carriage house and she sees her father with a woman, that's not what she has to look at, right? Like I think Sam stood next to Lisa and tickled her, but she understood what was happening. So that's what we talked about. Do you understand what's happening? Yes, I went over it with my mother. Okay, so it's very frightening. So so a way of directing kids that I still teach my students is that there's a way of exposing the character and protecting the actor.
Yeah, y'all can clap for that. And when we talk about protecting the kids, one of, I think, the most iconic scenes is when Journey continues her to go off and get out of the damn tub, right? We all laugh, But I think oftentimes when we see black girls and they cuss and they do these things, they're often adultified, right? And you were able to create that scene and direct that scene in a way where she was still a child, where we saw the humor in it, and we didn't look at her as an adult, right? So how were you able to do that?
Well, we rehearsed for a while, and in our rehearsing, we worked on body language, and and time and place. Because this was not even, I set the movie back from even my childhood. So we're talking 1962 is when it's set, because in the South it's like the 50s. It's almost like the 50s, and so what body language was like then, because Journey was a contemporary little girl, so she would like get the neck roll out, and these are kind of the positions that I think are okay in your body language that don't feel so contemporary, so we worked on how she stood, how she walked, though she has that little walk, but what her body language was like, and so she was very into by that point in the movie, very into Eve and who she was and what time and place she was in.
It was very evident. It was done so well. That's one of my favorite scenes. So I just want to point that out. Another question, because this was my first time seeing the director's cut. And the uncle.
Yeah.
I want to just get a little bit into that.
Yeah.
And your decision to put him back into the movie, because again, we didn't know he was there. Right? So the importance of that character and why you felt it was so important to make sure that character made it into the director's cut.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, like I said, it's a fable, but there are elements of my family in it. But the most his name was Tommy. That was my great uncle Tommy. His name was Tommy, and he had cerebral palsy, and I felt that it was very American, very like the story of Black American family, and it was really real. And even if it was uncomfortable, this is a family, and it was my family. And I started writing Eve's Bayou as a series of short stories. I was talking about it a little bit earlier today, and one of them was about two children that have to say goodnight to their great uncle, and so it was one of the original fundamental stories in Eve's Bayou. But I also felt that at the time that I wrote it, that it was very important that there was a witness, so that there was a truth contained in someone, in a character. So the hardest thing for me to let go of, though I embraced it, I'm like, well, there is no truth. There is no truth if there's not a witness. So they're two very different things. And I ended up liking both versions of it. But Tommy, I knew there was no question that I was going to bring back the director's cut. This was, we had locked the film and cut the negative, and I had a disagreement with the financiers, producers, and they who felt strongly, and we had there were several issues that there was a negotiation, and I lost ultimately Uncle Tommy, but there was no question that I was if it was a director's cut, I was going to bring him back. It was a lot for me and my crew, because the character was so much a part of the film, that we were like, where's Tommy? I mean, it was like a loss. It's like you cut my great uncle out of my film, and I thought was both very Gothic, but also very just like an American family, and so yeah, it hurt, but I must say I ended up liking both versions in terms of the implication of memories, a selection of images.
As we talk about the uncle, right? I don't know if anybody has known this, but on social media, the director's cut is a hot topic.
Oh, is it?
And one of my students, I thought I saw there. She raised her hand. She was explaining to me that she was excited because this was a hot topic in the addition of the uncle and what that did to the film, right? This idea of truth, right? And so now we have this character that the truth is contained in, and people on social media have been asking, what is the truth? And so I'm going to ask you.
So,
what is the truth?
For decades I didn't answer this question. I was like, what do you think the truth is? But I don't feel, I'm older now, and I don't need to be cute, So because I do know, and I wrote about it, and this is what I wrote. In a moment, a line was crossed, and like sleepwalkers awaking from a nightmare, they couldn't get their bearings. Each was lost. So a moment got away from them, and they don't know. They don't know what happened.
Yeah, y'all can clap for that. Yeah. I appreciate you answering that question. That was amazing, and I think so much of the dialogue behind this movie is what is the truth, right? There are people who are going back and forth, and I think, like you said, it depends, right? Everybody contains their own truth, and giving honor and space to everybody's truth is so important. And I love the end of the movie because, again, she sees, right, her version of the truth, Eve does, but she chooses to honor her sister's truth, right? She chooses to honor her sister's truth, and they bury that letter. And I think that was a powerful moment, right? Because you give power to her voice, you give power to your sister's voice, and then you give power to that bond, right? And so you give power to black girls, and you give power to their experiences, and you give power to their truth, right, in that moment. So that was amazing. And I want to, because we got some more stuff going on tonight, I want to wrap it up, but I have a lot of questions. My last question, and I'm going to kind of, how do you inspire the next generation of filmmakers? We have, of course, some young people, the next generation of storytellers, the next generation of filmmakers, right? This was your story, right? And so I just want to know, what words would you give them about writing their story and making sure that they tell their story?
Yeah, I think I was talking earlier a bit about emotional truth. Everything doesn't have to be literal truth when you're doing your own biography. It's difficult to tell things in a completely, you might hurt somebody's feelings, for instance, that is very close to you. And you have to be willing to do some of that, but on the other hand, fictionalizing can be your friend. And sometimes it takes the pressure off. So I've had students or known young filmmakers that are really struggling with telling their own story, and I said, well, just write a little, fictionalize it a bit, and then all of a sudden it flows. And then maybe they can come back to what is real, but often what they find is the fictional version, the more fictionalized version, is emotionally true. And I think that that's really important.
So I just want to, do we have time for one question from the audience? Just one? Do we have a question? I see a lot of hands.
I think we will have questions. Are you willing to take
Of course.
Okay. Say my name. Okay.
Hi, I'm Shelby, on-air personality here in Jackson, Mississippi. So take us from that moment where you're stepping onto your set and it comes to fruition. Now, we're about to say action, and then take us to that final day when you say it's a wrap. What was that feeling like in that mindset? Day of, stepping into it, day of, we did that.
I think that, thank you for that question. I was I'm anxious. I have a little anxiety disorder. And so for me, preparation and concentration is my friend. So I was prepared. I mean, we had storyboarded the whole movie. I was completely prepared. Me and my DP, we met all day long. Every day I met with my crew. I was really prepped, and so I had a certain relaxation. Drove to location with my assistant, drove me to work, and I come to location and I see all the trucks. A movie's like a city, right? And I burst into tears, and I couldn't stop crying, because I was so honored, that they were there for me. And any of you, Raven, or any of you that have done features, I know have had that feeling where, you come and you see everybody has shown up for you, even on short films, and it's such an honor. And so that, I remember crying, and then just throwing myself into the concentration of the work, Every movie is like a miracle, and just getting through a shoot is a miracle. We had a million things going against. I could tell you so many stories, but we had a lot of things that went down while we were trying to shoot that were, either it was the elements, or it was, a horrible banging from hell across the bayou, and having to find where it was coming from and pay people off to stop banging so we could, because we weren't going to ever be able to go backwards and reshoot anything.
Right.
The end of the movie, was a whole other story, because I went through maybe 19 drafts of the script, but the script that we shot had a slightly different ending, because I had originally written the ending where where she finds the letter and confronts her sister. I had written that for older girls, that time had passed. How was I going to do that? Well, I had a brilliant idea, because both Journey and Megan had sisters that were actresses that were that age, that were beautiful and fabulous.
Nice.
Shot the movie, shot the end with the sisters, and at some point my editor's like, you need to look at it. And what you realized was, as wonderful as their sisters were, you wanted to see those same little girls.
Yeah.
So while we were shooting on a schedule that the bond company was watching my back, I had to rewrite and reshoot the ending.
Wow.
Something very sophisticated that was not meant for a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old to play, but they were so gifted that they played that scene. You lied to me. I mean, it's beautiful. And so in a panic, I couldn't finish the film. And so when I finished, it's like, yes! We got through it. I lay on the floor of my trailer, and it was a really great moment. It was a really great moment. And then the DP and I went back to the hotel room, and she lay on the floor and I lay on my bed. We're just like, it's always a wonderful moment when you have the film in the can. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a question here.
Hi, my name is Joycelyn McCoy. I'm a senior here at Tougaloo. So I really appreciated all the different foreshadowing that was throughout the film. The uncle's hat falling off his head as it sort of goes back as he leaves the car before he dies in the accident. The spider appearing in the vision, and then again the same spider on the window. And then the aunt was obviously considered a black widow who killed the husbands. So I would say what was your favorite sort of Easter egg or little fun fact in the film, or your favorite detail that you had the most fun creating?
Oh God, there's so many. Two funny things. One night I was, when you're making a movie, there's always some night you're pacing around in the dark on the cell phone, mad, right? Pacing around in the woods outside the house, talking to somebody intently about something, and then the next morning, I went to that same spot, and I saw that I had been pacing beneath the spider web, and there's this huge banana spider, hanging over my head. I'm like, oh my God, but I didn't know. I was focused on my rage or whatever I was feeling, and so I'm like, you're gonna be in the movie. And so the spider, I'm actually quite afraid of spiders, but they were omnipresent. They were just everywhere. And all kinds of tarantulas, all kinds of spiders. And it's like, can we please get the spiders out of the cabin where Miss Carol is going to be? I don't want her to see tarantulas. And, and the spider wrangler would come, and they would just kind of pick up the spider. And so I got to kind of love the spider. So the spider came that way. But it's so funny, because my favorite ones are the ones that people still point out to me that I'm not sure I was aware of. It's usually in some grad school paper, they'll be like, even the apple and the pomegranate symbolizing death. And I'm like, They're like, even the snake and even the apple. I'm like, yes, of course, I must have planned that. But I'm not sure. I was thinking about it, really. I'm not sure.
We got a question up here.
You mentioned, my name is Yolanda, Tougaloo alum. You mentioned Diane Carroll, who's iconic, one of our jewels. Please share how it was to work with her. Obviously you had an all-star cast, but just her, if you could just speak on her.
Okay, well, Diane, I loved Diane. So I said the exact right thing because I had heard she was hard to get, and so I said, Diane, I'm such a fan. We're talking on the phone, and she says, But I said the right thing. I said, I saw you in Agnes of God on Broadway, and I loved it so much I snuck in and saw it again and again. And she said, you did? So I think if I had said I loved you in Julia, she would have been, And but she was wonderful to work with. She was wonderful, but she was so beautiful that they saw the dailies and they said she's not scary.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what was her approach with the makeup?
So one day I showed up at her trailer with a Yoruba book, and I said, would you be into this? And she said, let me think. First I said, Dan, it's just, you're so beautiful. You said these bones. I said, what'd you think about doing something like this? Something, and she said, oh, let me think about it. And then by the time she later on that day, she had added the spot. She was like fully embraced it. And she was wonderful, wonderful to work with, wonderful. And she said one of my favorite things about acting, a take was over. I said, I loved that. That was amazing. How did you feel? And she said, art is so elusive, isn't it? It is, though. It is.
Any questions from our dignitaries? Our students? Okay. Hey, Whitney.
Hello, I'm Whitney Tougaloo. How does it feel to have such an important film still so much time later? It's just as important as it was. The conversations surrounding it are just as important. The topics that you touched on are still ever present today. How does it feel to create something so magical and powerful that it has transcended throughout time?
Wow. I'm sorry. It's emotional to hear that. I feel just incredibly blessed, I feel incredibly blessed. I'm so grateful to the people that have understood exactly what I was trying to say. When you create art, it's always a question. This moves me, does it move you? And you don't know if the answer is you don't know, right? If somebody's exactly speaking the language that you're speaking, particularly when you're a little hit, like I was kind of all over the place in terms of what's real, what's not real, smudged boundaries. That's what I thought the major theme was, and that for people to just get it, year after year, decade after decade, for people to just understand it. I can't tell you, sorry, it's emotional, but I can't tell you how important it is to me that what moved me moves other people. Yeah.
I believe we have one last question from Ms. Tougaloo, Ms. Almia Valentine.
Thank you. Hello, how are you?
Hello.
I'm Almia, and I just have a really quick question. In East Bayou, the father's infidelity seems to create not only emotional turmoil, but a kind of spiritual imbalance within the family. Did you intend for his actions to symbolize how a man's lust and betrayal can open deeper spiritual wounds that affect generations?
Right? Well, yeah, I knew what it had done within my family, frankly. And I was speaking a bit to that. I knew that at some point I would have to show the film to my father. He was going to see it, and he would recognize certain things, Like I said, a lot of it is fictionalized, and some of it isn't. And so I knew that wound that I feel that I still have. It's so casually done, I think, as if it's not important, but it is.
Everyone, let's give her a hand. You can come on, stand on your feet for Casey Lemons.
Thank you so much.
No, we thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you all again for joining us for the Director's Cut and for this talk back. We appreciate you. We honor you and your art and what you have done for Black women's voices and what you continue to do with your teaching and everything that you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you and we are honored to have you here. Everybody, please give it up one more time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And everyone, stay alert, stay alert. Remember, we have Rita Brent at 8:30. It's going to take you about 2 minutes to walk across campus, right over to Warren Hall. At 8:30, we have the shed. So get ready to turn up with our musical artists and continue to have fun. Thank you again for attending tonight's setting. We'll see you at Warren Hall.